All right, welcome to another week of the Collector Car Podcast. A lot of fun stuff happening. Just came back from Scottsdale where there's some really cool sales going on. I will recap some of those in next week's podcast. And where am I going to be next? Well, actually, I'm kind of staying in the office here for a little bit. I believe my next trip will actually be to Cavallino Classic down in Boca Raton. So if you're going to be down there, be sure to check me out, look me up. I will be judging Ferraris. So where am I off to next? Next, I'm off to Boca Raton, Florida for Cavallino Classic. It's moved locations for at least 1 year, so I'm looking forward to seeing what's going on there. And I will be judging Ferraris. So if you're headed to the show, please find me on the show field, and I'd love to catch up in person. And this is an exciting episode because it's not about collector cars. It's about high-end sports utility vehicles. So very, very cool. Whenever I have these episodes that are about Land Rovers or Range Rovers, they seem to do very well because a lot of you really like these. So before we get to the podcast, please take a listen to my sponsors. They've always been very supportive, not only in the podcast, but also in the new launch of my book, The Enthusiast Guide to Collector Cars. Now that's coming out hopefully May 1st. And you can go to the website in the description to order your own to be a part of the launch. And you can also sign up for my newsletter where there's some behind the scenes stuff that's going on, not only around the book, but around the podcast as well as my travels. So please take a listen to my sponsors and then we'll get to the interview. If you own a collector car, you already know it deserves more than a standard insurance policy. NCM Insurance specializes in agreed value coverage designed specifically for classic, collector, and enthusiast vehicles. From weekend drivers to serious collectors, they understand how these cars are used, stored, and protected. To learn more about protecting your collector car the right way, visit ncminsurance.com. Coverage built for the cars you care about. Imagine a journey so rare it only happened once. That's the spirit behind Once. Exclusive, one-time only adventures that will never be repeated. Our next experience, American Muscle Legends, takes you trackside with the most iconic cars in history, complemented by luxury accommodations and behind-the-scenes access you simply can't buy. Spots are limited. When it's gone, it's gone. You can learn more at discoveronce.com/muscle. All right, welcome to the Collector Car Podcast. Hey, it's Greg Stanley, as always. Looking forward to covering some cool stuff here today because I haven't done, I do a lot of collector cars, but I haven't done anything around Defenders recently, so I'm very excited about this episode. So I'd like to welcome Paul Potratz. How you doing, buddy?
Good, good. Thanks, Greg. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, and you are doing something really interesting that I'd like to dig into here some. So if you would, tell us a little bit about what you do now, specifically around Helderburg Defenders, and we can dig into it a little bit.
All right. So I think the really when people ask me what exactly are we, and I consider us more of a design house, and so we do low volume, and it's really a design led development of the classic Land Rover Defender. So they're all 25 years old plus, but we take a totally different direction than probably anybody else has ever heard or any of the other people that are in the market.
Now, I love this because I'm assuming, now correct me if I'm wrong here, but the reason you chose Defender, I did look on your website a little bit. You have a love from a young age for Defenders, but I would imagine it's also because it's such a iconic and timeless design, almost ageless, I would imagine, right?
It's exactly how I really describe it as timeless. And it goes back really deep because my father was really drawn to anything that was British. So I grew up with everything British. I mean, everything from his three-speed bicycle that I would ride on the back in the very comfortable seat when could barely walk, to the point that his boots, his clothing, the cars. So growing up in his shop, it was often that I would see Jaguars and Aston Martins and Range Rovers. I mean, that's the life that I grew up in. And so I don't know if that's what really caused it, but I just love the British design, the British personality, and just the way the Brits really put things together. I mean, we won't get into the other part of the Brit stuff that we maybe don't like, but that's the part that we fixed.
Right, right. Yeah, and I know it is such an iconic design and not to draw a direct parallel, but you think about Singer and their Porsches, they picked the generation of Porsches that they could make, you know, uh I guess, build on that iconic design and make it their own from a design, performance, engineering perspective. And it seems like you're doing something similar. So tell us, what is a Helderberg Defender, and kind of like, what do you start with, and what do walk us through that process of taking, maybe the donor, sport ute, and then what do you do to it to make it a Helderberg Defender?
Right. Exactly. And I mean, and that is a good way. I mean, a lot of our clients also own singers and they also add a Helderberg or multiple Helderbergs because it seems like they just can't invest in one. But, and that's the direction that we have taken. So we do start with, they have to be 25 years old or older to be able to come into the country legally. That's the first point. But we're very specific in the donors that we find. So we only work with original left-hand drive. And a lot of people think as a Defender as a right-hand drive. And that was the vast majority of the ones being built. So I'm sourcing them from Italy, Poland, France, Germany, countries that are original left-hand drive. And I guess you could say that it's getting harder and harder to source those because they simply didn't make as many of left-hand drive as they did right-hand drive. So we source that, we bring that to our shop. Our shop is, in fact, in England. I mean, we went there a number of years ago because I used to build them stateside. And it just simply didn't make sense for a number of different reasons. One, I was having to ship all the parts over because I spent a lot of time in England. And that's where I went, my past life, my past career, because cars were my stress relief, my hobby. But I would go there a lot and work with craftsmen and design everything from cylinder heads to intercoolers to door hinges to exhaust systems. I mean, the list goes on. And so I'm shipping all those parts over to build the trucks and then finding the guys that to put them together. While they were good, they weren't great
Mm.
because they were used to Ford and Chevy and, American cars. And a Defender is much, much different. It's much more difficult, much more time consuming because it has so many more parts. And so I ended up moving operations over to England because my best friend has a property there. We built a shop, 28,000 square feet, and was fortunate that Land Rover, when it was bought by Tata Motors, they moved Defenders to Slovakia and left some displaced workers, which gave
Mm.
us the opportunity to hire these craftsmen. That's what they grew up with. That's what they've known.
Hmm.
And even our painter came from Formula One Red Bull UK. So it just seemed like all the stars aligned for us to build there. But when we first started out, I mean, we were doing the typical build process years ago, meaning that we were buying parts off of the shelf and we just kept on progressing and saying, all right, well, we need to mill this part, or we need to find a shop that was supplying some type of a performance part for some type of manufacturer. And piece by piece, I mean, we've redone everything from body panels to cylinder heads, exhaust systems, suspension systems, steering systems. And it makes it, we keep that iconic and also that collectible value. And, but we keep the soul to it also. So it's like a fine line. And that's what a Helderberg is. It's just a very refined classic Land Rover that is still numbers matching and is brought right to the line of where it could be considered a resto mod, but it's not.
Okay, no, that's great. Now, I haven't asked this yet, but where does the name come from?
The name, simple enough. My previous life, I like to share my hobbies, and but I didn't want to share the hobbies where my employees would see it because they would want to raise, and I didn't want my clients to see it because they'd feel like they were paying me too much. So I came up with the name, and the name just seemed to resonate because I didn't want to use my last name, Potratz. And so that was my alias social media profile to share, everything that I'm passionate about. So that's how it started. And I was never intending to start offering my toys, more or less on a mass market. But when COVID happened, it just something magical happened. I mean, I wasn't going to the office anymore, as no one else was. And I did a cross-country road trip in one of my builds. And a friend of mine said, "You should really do this. You're more passionate about this than anything else I've seen, and I've known you for 40 years." And that's how it really all started. And
That's
then
amazing. So, how many personal builds did you do before you explored it as a business?
um, I don't know an exact number, but I would say probably in the mid 40s.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but the personal builds, I mean, the vast majority of those was the classic Land Rovers, but I was also doing classic Porsches, Alfa Romeos, and so there's some of those design elements that we did, and really not design, but the performance elements that we did for, these really outlandish, no red line Porsches that we built. And I took some of those elements and built them into the Defenders. But yeah, I would say at least 35 of them were Defenders. And it was basically like a really bad addiction. And it's even worse now.
Well, at least you're making it a business now. So, you know, you can
Yeah.
indulge, say, hey, it's my business, you know?
Well, that's the way I justified it to the wife. I mean, my wife always laughs. Anytime I would go to get something, I'd always tell her how it was going to be an investment. And she's like, all right, whatever.
Well, I love everything you're doing with these because I'm pulling up the Nixon commission right now, and this is absolutely stunning. Now, it looks like you do offer, it comes with what, a 3.5 diesel, but you do have a V8 conversion. Is that right?
In reality, in truth, yes, I offer the opportunity to talk to individuals about the V8 conversion, but the chances of me taking a commission on like that is pretty slim because I feel it's just silly
Hmm.
and for a number of different reasons. And but it allows me the opportunity to educate someone and explain why the diesel is a superior engine. And I mean, with the diesels, I have three different levels. I have the original 300 TDI 2.5 liter, which Land Rover did. And then we have the 300 TDI 2.8 liter, which has our own custom internals where we've done crankshafts, we've done connecting rods, and everything else that takes it to a completely different level. And then we have we base it off of a turbo diesel, which is a TD5 5-cylinder. And then that one has our own computer, our tuning, our internals, everything on it is our exclusive design that makes all of these very drivable. But you don't, and all of those power plants were engineered for the Defender. So you're not giving up anything, you're just completely gaining everything. There's a lot of individuals, if you watch videos, you'll hear how they're underpowered and they're slow when it comes to Defenders. But that was by design because they were built as farm trucks. So the whole idea was to be able to put your calf in the back and haul it across the field, whether you're in Wales or whatever. It was a work truck. So it was built exclusively for torque, not speed. But Range Rover, which was known as the family vehicle, had the same exact engine, but the Defender engine was detuned and the Range Rover was not. So different purpose. And I think it really comes to the difference. Do you want a mountain bike or a road bike if you do the same comparison? And that's what we've done is we've completely retuned everything from the engine, the transmission, the transfer case, the front and rear differentials, all of that.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, and I know that, once you experience a diesel the way it's meant to be experienced, you really want to stay with that powertrain, correct?
Yeah, and the beauty of the diesel too, it's not like a modern day diesel where you have to use the DEF fluid, the diesel exhaust fluid that you have to add, and you don't have any of those inconveniences. Hence, it's 25 years old plus. But you have all the modern elements, power. So you've got the torque, you've got the horsepower, you've got the drivability. And with the diesel, you're getting 28 to 32 miles per gallon versus the V8, you get 8 to 10 miles per gallon. The diesel runs cooler, the gasoline runs hotter, and you feel the heat in the cabin on the gasoline. You don't on the diesel. But I really look at it, do you want, a real Patek Philippe or do you want a fake replica Patek Philippe? And whenever you put a V8, a GM V8 in there, it's not real anymore. And I think a lot of individuals don't understand that, but I grew up in that culture. And I remember my dad got a 911S. It was a 1969 911S, and it was all original. And that was one of my vehicles. I mean, it was a basket case. And of course, what did I do? What every other teenager would do. I pulled the engine out and went to the larger, the 3.2 liter. If I would have left that all original, that
Yeah.
vehicle would be worth quarter of a million versus being worth 70,000. And
Yeah.
people just don't seem to understand that. But not just a collector value, but it's just what it was engineered for. And as my dad always told me too, that, I would always want to put bigger, 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 bigger into everything. And he said, well, anytime you go for the performance like that, now you're creating something you're having to work on all the time. It's not going to be reliable. And
Right.
that's the truth. I
Yeah.
mean, even though people think GMV8, oh, that's reliable. Well, no, it's not.
Well, I must say, I'm looking at some of your past builds and they're absolutely fantastic. They're unbelievable. And it's so many different configurations, four door, two door, you got the truck bed, you've got the exterior outside roll cage. Walk me through the commission process. So if someone would like to learn more, the description or the podcast link will be in the description. But yeah, walk us through the commission process for one of these builds.
Yep. So what we do is we are, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, we limit the production. So we do an interview process first. We talk to the individual and we see how are they going to use it? How long do they plan on using it? How long do they normally keep their vehicles? And as we go through that process, we decide are they a good fit for us or not? And then what are they do, what do they want with it? So if they start asking questions, can I get a push button start? Can I get retracting running boards? Can I get that take, or can I get a body kit? If they start asking those questions, then I know purely they're not for us.
Right.
And there's plenty of builders out there that will do that. And I'm a big believer, and just because we can do things doesn't mean that we should have restraint when we're doing a design. So it really starts with a conversation. I want everyone to be a one of one. And as you look on the website, I think you can clearly see that every build is unique. And that's what Helderberg's known for is a one of one commission. And we talk through it and I work with them on design, whether they come here to, one of my properties or we do it over the phone. But we talk about, how many individuals are in their family, how are they going to drive, what type of road trips, what appeals to them style wise, colors. So we make it specifically unique for them, one of one. And then we start with a 50% deposit that holds in their build slot. And then we'll start that process, but it goes all the way down to just a bare frame. And then we build it back piece by piece. So there's nothing that has not been touched in one of our builds. And the materials that go into our builds, I mean, our leather, for example, comes directly from Scotland and it's tanned to order. So we're not pulling a bolt of leather off the shelf. They look at various leathers. I've got, a lot of different, patina leathers and marbled leathers and all kinds of stuff. So we order the leather. The Alcantara suede on the roof is from Italy, so that's done to order too. The steering wheel is handmade, but it's made to the thickness of whatever their glove size is, so it's the proper thickness. The seat frame is made specifically to them. We have different designs, but it's so we get measurements to make sure that it fits their hamstrings, their torso, their shoulder blades. The center console is made specifically to them. The pedals are adjusted. The length of the shift rod, or if it's an automatic transmission. So everything is done specific to the individual. And as we go through the build process, we, invite them to come visit our shop in England. So we're about an hour and a half out northwest of London. And they just become part of the process. We don't really talk about timelines because this type of process really cannot be rushed,
Mhm.
but generally it is a little over a year to as long as 2 years. Definitely, we've done some really unique builds where we've got some really interesting interiors that's gone in that were private builds that the client didn't want us to share it. that took 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it can take some time. And and then it just starts to come together, and then it's completed, and then it comes to, generally it comes to where I'm at in the Ozarks, or because I don't spend as much time in New York because it's too cold there. And I spend time with it, and I drive it, I photograph it, and then the audio all gets installed here, and
Now,
we deliver it.
I noticed there's quite a array of colors that have you've had in the past. Have you ever said no to a color?
Absolutely. Yes. And it wasn't that I said no to a color, it was that I said no to a lack of a color.
Mm. Hmm.
So I've had a couple individuals come to us and say, I want you to paint it Raptor. And I'm like, Raptor, are you talking about Line-X, the the finish that's in the back of a pickup truck so it doesn't get scratched? And he was like, yes, that's what I want. And I was like, yeah, we can't do that
Yeah.
because I am all about color. I mean, if anybody looks at the vehicles that I've had in the past or the way I dress, it's all about color.
Yeah.
And and our colors, a lot of them are custom mixed, actually, the vast majority of them, and they're one of one. And we have generally, not always 100% one of one, but if the client has the opportunity after the bespoke color that we'll remove it from our list and we won't recreate it again. But I love color. I mean, I always wanted to be a fashion designer when I was a young man, and it was all about color and patterns. And it's the
Well,
same thing on the interiors too.
well, I was going to say I can definitely tell that on the interiors because the leatherwork and on the interiors and the different types of, quilted leather. I don't know how you would say it, but or diamond cut leather. I mean, it's just gorgeous. All in a lot of different colors in there. It looks like everything's covered in leather, the dash and everything.
It is. I'm not a fan of plastic. I talk about that in my videos. So don't like plastic. I like to have it covered up, and I like to cover it with a foam and then a leather. And then we, of course, do the different quilted patterns. The quilted patterns, we can do all different types of custom designs. And then we do the embroidery. So if someone has, for example, let's say a dog that was their favorite dog or existing dog, we can embroider that into the seat. And then, of course, in some of the trucks in the back, you'll see that we do mahogany wood, where we've reclaimed wood from a Chris Craft boat and put mahogany wood in the back in the cargo area. And then we do like an ambiance, a mood lighting, LED lighting through the cabin. But and the thing is, when you're looking at a Helderberg from the outside, they all are uniquely done. If you can see the consistency in every single design, an underlying consistency, short of a body style and whether it has a roll cage or not, but it's known as the Helderberg stance.
Hmm.
And that's a development process that we do with the chassis to be able to get that, and then the axles and everything else. But I keep that core element, but after that, the sky is the limit in what I want to do. So, because you know, clients do expect it to have that Helderberg unique look when it's sitting in the parking lot. And I hear this a lot of times on social media. They're like, oh, I could tell exactly that was a Helderberg.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely see that. It definitely is a call it a signature style. I mean, the stance because you can see it from a mile away. Very, very nice. And I love how you have different patterns in the seats. It's not just one size fits all. It's
No.
purely customized for sure. Now, who gets to name the commission?
Generally, I do. But I always, I offer it to the client, but a lot of times they want me to name it. I'm a big poetry and history buff. So and not only do I love to read poetry, but I love to write poetry and I love to write. So generally, when I'm driving one of the vehicles, a name comes to me, and the name could have been the previous owner or the previous owner's dog or a location where they lived or something in poetry. And then some of the names are purely client driven. And so it's kind of a combination of the two. But yeah, each one has a unique name. But I always say too, each one has a unique personality. And if somebody's not, either they get it or they don't. They don't have to be a car person, but I think it's either a get it or don't type of thing that each
Right.
one's unique and different. And I think that's, one of the things when we're building the Helderbergs, that the clients are taking such an active role and with the process that we go through to make sure that it is the right fit for the right client, that there simply is none on the secondary market. So it's just creating this increased desirability to the point now that there's other builders and there's people that are listing their trucks for sale and they're calling it a Helderberg when it's clearly not. So we do a lot of things, everything from the headlights to the trim on the rings of the lights that has engraving on it to show that it's authentically a Helderberg. Because I mean, our prices went from not that much to where they are to this point. And anytime you start doing that and there's the desirability, then of course you have people wanting to copy it. And we're seeing a lot of that right now. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Bernie, stay busy.
Yeah. So you brought up a couple things there. First off, what is the average price point? I know it varies wildly based on, I don't know about widely, but obviously based on, the donor vehicle they have to be by, but also configuration. What's the approximate price point?
Yeah, so generally we started around 338,000 and this is general price. But anywhere from 338,000 to about 478,000. And then additional configurations can drive it as high as 600,000.
Well, and it's really important what you just said because I won't say where, I won't say who, I won't say why, when, or how, but I was at a Concours event and I go to a lot of those all across the country, and I saw someone selling, kind of like a knockoff, and it was a big price point, and the quality it looked good from 20 feet, but all you had to do was just take 2 seconds to look around, and I just could not believe that price point was there considering what I was looking at, and they're trying to
Yes.
pass it off as something of this level when it clearly was not. So you really need to, you know, do your homework and obviously go with a brand that's proven, and that has the history like yours does. And I really love, I'm just looking at some of the pictures here. The Marshall speaker, how often have you seen a
Yeah.
Marshall speaker in any car like this or SUV? It's just, that's a nice touch.
Yeah, and it's fun doing those things like that. And our what we have been doing now for the last year right now, we work directly with Focal, which Focal is known to be very high-end audio out of France. And we needed a very specific speaker combo that they make exclusively for us. And that's where the clients, when they're really doing their homework and researching and they start to dig in, they're like, oh wow, this is, exclusive to a Helderberg. And we did even the same thing. So high fidelity audio is really important to me because I'm an audio buff, but even our amplifiers too are handmade in Italy. And then the audio system is tuned specifically to the cabin of the vehicle, whether it's a two-door, four-door, soft top, whatever it may be. But it's all those little touches and elements that make it complete, and especially with the clients, because we did one recently called our equestrian edition, which meant we had to go out and find someone that knows how to engrave, like a fine engraver that they can engrave a watch, the mechanisms of a watch or a gun, a shotgun or something like that. But that's what keeps it exciting, that it never gets stale, and it's not like an assembly line either.
Yeah, and I love the steering wheel. The steering wheel is actually reminds me of the old Jag steering wheels, back in the 50s. Just the quality, just that, rich wood, just absolutely looks amazing. Now, why do you think vehicles like the Defender resonate so much with so many enthusiasts for so many years?
I think there's a few different factors, and I think the one thing how our culture has shifted away from coupes
Mhm.
and sports cars, and we're much more of an SUV society now. And so I think that's the one thing, being that it's an SUV, that's why people like it. But I think the deeper meaning of why a Defender really resonates with everyone, and that's what we talk about, is this is a lifestyle. We're not doing performance specs, we're building a lifestyle. But I think part of it is we grew up watching like National Geographic and Mutual of Omaha, and we would see a Land Rover in the wild. And subconsciously, I think with that Land Rover, that it evokes a sense of adventure. And the more that we're being involved with AI and we don't know what's real and what's not, and driving a vehicle that, that we have to be careful that we stay in the lanes, otherwise it's, pestering us. And I think that people just want that analog experience and the sense of adventure, even if they're just driving to the store, that it allows them to kind of escape from all the noise for a few minutes. And I think that's why it's made it so popular. And then just the utilitarian, because you see a lot of individuals now too that, workwear clothing is really popular to have that more of that utilitarian, rugged look. And the Defender fits so many aspects of it, from utilitarian to feeling like you're in an adventure. And then ultimately, that I think a lot of us are fighting to have that individuality and who we are and how we look and how we appear. And we just simply don't want a mass-produced vehicle that you can go to a dealership and anybody can buy, that we want that individuality. And it's just timeless.
I tell you what, I can definitely tell the individual aspect of your custom builds here when looking through the interior. And one interior really surprised me in that it is cloth. So tell
Oh,
me
yeah.
about that build.
Harris tweed. So again, where I am just you know, love everything British. And anytime I can pull something in that is authentically, whether it's British, Scottish, that's what I'm doing. So, I met the client and he had a blazer on, and instantly I spotted, and I was like, "Oh, you have a black watch, Harris tweed." And he's like, "Oh yeah, you know your fabrics." And I was like, "Of course I do." And I said, "Why don't we do a Harris tweed interior? We won't do black watch because it'd be too dark. Instead, we'll do much more of a British pattern that is looks much like a gentleman would wear if he is going out on a shoot on a drive, and meaning pheasant hunting." And he's like, "Oh, I love that idea. Can you do that?" And I was like, "Absolutely, we can do that." So we did the Harris tweed, and then I did a interesting combo with the leather too. And the leather that's in there is the same color as the leather that they use on a shotgun case for a Holland and Holland.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's very cool. Just stunning. Just flipping through the pictures, just absolutely stunning work you're doing there. Now, as I close, I have two more questions.
All right.
One car related, one not. But is there a cool car in your garage that is kind of like an enthusiast type car?
Yeah, I would say so. There's probably a few actually. I
What's
mean,
the one that gets driven the most?
the one I drive the most though really is definitely my the name of it's Dragon, which is it's a 130, which is a pickup truck, and it's in a very vibrant, deep golden. It's like a gold. It is a gold. It's gold. I drive that the most. And for the simple reason that I have a bad habit of sometimes getting on the phone, not paying attention, and running over curbs or doing something like that. So I don't drive my sports cars as much anymore. And just for the simple fact that if I run over a curb or a shopping cart, it's not a big deal in my 130 pickup truck because it's an absolute beast. And honestly, I do love seeing everyone smile because when I pull up, people just come right to me and start asking questions. And I always love how polite they are. And they always say, "Do you mind if I take a picture?" And then I'm always saying, "You want to sit in it? Let me take your picture." So that's my favorite, I would say, is the 130 pickup truck.
Okay, you mentioned sports cars. Can you share one, maybe a Porsche that is in your garage? I'm assuming there's a Porsche there somewhere.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, there definitely is. It would be my 1972 Porsche that I did. It was a complete rust bucket, so it's primarily carbon fiber, but it looks all original because it doesn't have no body kits, nothing. So it's a narrow body, long hood, of course. And I did it in leaf green because leaf green was a color that they offered. Porsche did in 1972. However, no one chose leaf green as a color. They didn't feel it was fitting for a Porsche, but Mercedes had leaf green as a color, and so did Jaguar, and that was their popular color on those two cars, but it wasn't for a Porsche. And I just love leaf green, and I just feel like it's a timeless color. And of course, my interior is custom that we did. So yeah, and that's one that I drive in the rallies, and
Okay.
it turns heads.
Oh, I bet. I bet it does. Well, actually, I didn't realize this, but I do have another question for you before I get
Okay.
to the non-car one. Tell us about the events that you do. I noticed that you are all over the place with some in-person events, but then you also have an opportunity for an event to maybe come to a business event. I don't know. Tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so we do a number of events. So our clients, it's interesting that well, and that's one of the reasons for the selection process with individuals is, I'm it's interesting that they're always like-minded, almost always. But they are like-minded. We have the same interests, the same passions, and they're very passionate about the vehicle. It becomes a family member. So what we do is we go to different clients' homes, because as you can imagine, they have very nice homes, and we'll go to the home and their Helderberg will be on display, and I generally take two more, and then it's a private invite, so it's by invitation only, that individuals can come out and see the various Helderbergs. So those are the events that we do all over the country. And then we also do events where we go to car clubs, where all these car clubs are popping up all across the country, but it's a club where individuals can store their vehicle, but it's also a social club where people go there and they have dinner and lunch and smoke cigars and watch football games. So
Yeah.
we go to those type of events. So again, it's all like-minded. And so we have those elements. And then, of course, we go to events that are about wildlife conservation. And so that's kind of our events. But I love getting out because I mean, I just love meeting all the individuals. And so we do quite a bit. So in coming up, we actually, we have a number of different cities that we're going to be in.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's really great. And the link to all of this will be in the description of the podcast. But tell us, what is your website?
Website is helderberg.com. And a lot of it's kind of sometimes it's hard to spell, but it's HELDERBURG.com.
That's awesome. Well, my last question is tell me about the two dogs behind you. I believe it's two dogs.
Oh yeah, Lucy loves to sleep in the chair. That's the princess. So she's in a lot of the videos with me. And then Leo back here, he's rarely in the videos. He's getting too old. He can't jump in and out of the trucks. But they're my Italian Mastiffs.
How fitting. Now, Lucy looked up when you said her name.
Of
She's
course
like,
she did. She thinks we're going for a ride now.
well, that's awesome. All right, before I close, is there anything else you would like to mention? Anything cool happening in your world that is either related to or not related to sport utes?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I just wrote a book because one of the things that I always have clients telling me after they get the Helderberg is how it's changed their life in the sense that they're able to put their phone down, they're able to go for a drive, and they just have conversation with their spouse now. So
Mhm.
it's a grounding experience to them that they really enjoy to kind of stop the hustle. And that was really why I decided to launch the company and share it, because that experience that I've had where I've done trips with my wife and it meant more than anything else. So it really came down to a philosophy. And therefore, I wrote a book that's on Amazon now, and it's called The Gentleman's Guide to an Intentional Life, which is it's essentially it's a modern philosophy, it meaning ritual and a well-made life.
Wow, that's awesome. How long has the book been out now?
Came out yesterday, actually. So it just came out here not long. And so, yeah, and I just kind of felt like it was time. I mean, because this was a book that I started to write about 5 years ago. So I pulled all my journals and sent my journals out to the gal that works with me. And I said, can you transcribe this? And she said, yeah. So 3 months later, she had it transcribed because I love to write in a fountain pen. And that's how I wrote the book was in a fountain pen.
Well, congratulations. I know that writing a book is a big undertaking, and to actually get it out there for people to enjoy is a really big step. Most of the folks that listen to my podcast know I have a book coming out in April called The Enthusiast Guide to Collector Cars. So I've been on a similar journey, different subject, but similar journey. So I can really appreciate what you've gone through and getting that out there.
Yeah, it was a relief. It definitely was. And I think I've actually inspired a couple clients that they're saying they're going to write a book now. So I'm going to keep on pushing them to be able to do that.
That's awesome. And I'll put the link to the book on Amazon in the description as well. So, Paul, again, thank you for being on the Collector Car podcast.
Thank you for having me.